So what's the ocean effect? It's easy to understand. Think about a cup of water. After you put it on the table, the surface of the water will be disturbed. But after a few seconds, the surface will return to perfect peace. Now let's increase the size of the water. A bucket. When you set a bucket on the floor, again the surface will be disturbed. But this time, it will take much longer before the surface returns to perfect peace. If we increase the size of the water again to, let's say, a swimming pool, the surface of the pool probably will never remain perfect peace. Tiny disturbances will keep spreading for a very long time. If we increase the size again to, let's say, a lake, well, the surface has zero chance to return to perfect peace. The ripples will be endless because when the size increases to this level, so many things are going to keep disturbing the water. If we increase the size again to a big ocean, well, forget about perfect peace. The waves will hit beach constantly for billions of years. When the size is this big, even the gravity from the moon will affect the water. That's why we have tides. And this is the ocean effect. By changing the size and nothing else, the behavior of the water will be changed. It doesn't only work on water. It works on everything. For example, hydrogen. When the size is small, you got a hydrogen balloon. Very cute. Are you going to be scared by it? Of course not. But if we increase the size of the balloon to this big, we don't have to do anything else. The balloon will become something very different. Jupiter is just a giant hydrogen balloon. But look at all the turbulence on the surface. Jupiter is a very violent place. It's not just scary, we can't survive there. And if we increase the size of the balloon again to this big, well, something amazing happens. The balloon begins to burn. There's nothing special about the sun but the size. It's just a much bigger Jupiter, a much bigger hydrogen balloon. Why is it burning? Well, when the size is this big, the gravity will be super strong. The hydrogen atoms will be squeezed together and form helium atoms. Then a tiny amount of energy will be released. And because there are a huge amount of hydrogen atoms being squeezed, so the sun generates a huge amount of energy. If you have enough hydrogen, you can make a sun for yourself. The ocean effect works on people as well. As long as there are people, there are conflicts among them. And a small population definitely will reach agreement faster than a larger population when conflicts happen. For example, if you are a college student living in a room with another student, one day you suggest that you two should have a trip to Grand Canyon this weekend. Your roommate says no, but since you know him well, after living together for a year, you know how to persuade him. You remind him of the possible visit from his auntie, which he hates, and you successfully persuade him. If the population increases to, let's say, 30, for example, a club, when you suggest a trip to Grand Canyon, it's more likely to be opposed by not one but several people. Now you have to persuade all of them, and you also have to persuade the fence-sitters. If the population increases to, let's say, 100, a bigger club, you can forget about the trip. Even having a meeting with all the members is a challenge. When the population is this huge, a hierarchy is already needed. The trip has to be decided by the leader. Other members just have to follow the decisions. If the population increases to 1,000, like a big company, the population has to be compartmented into several sections. And a serious hierarchy is just not needed, is crucial. When the population increases to 1 billion like China, it's going to be like this all the time. And it's going to be like this from time to time. The ocean effect also works on our economy. What is economy? Originally, it was just a simple trading system. You have fish, I have lamb, so let's trade. By doing that, we share what we have. When the size of this trading system increased with the population, things became a little more complicated. First, money emerged. Then, when the size increased and passed a critical level during the Industrial Revolution, something amazing happened. Just like the giant hydrogen balloon begins to burn, and we begin to call it the sun. When the size of our trading system is big enough, money can generate money spontaneously, and we call it capitalism. Capitalism is not an ideology, not a system. It's just a name we use when the size of the trading system increased, and the nature of the system is changed. Now, our system is more turbulent and more unpredictable than before. Sometimes a small activity could cause chain reactions and end with a disaster. Some people call it the butterfly effect. It's actually the ocean effect. If we confine the butterfly in an isolated small room, it doesn't really matter how many times the butterfly flips its wings, nothing big would ever happen. Only in a giant system, small activities would have such power. Nowadays, everyone has to worry about the economy because it changes constantly and it would have a great impact on all of us. We are all like a small boat on the surface of a violent ocean. That's why everyone is super busy, even in rich countries. We're trying to fend off the unpredictable future by earning more money as a buffer. The ocean effect also works on our psychology. You see, our brains didn't evolve to deal with millions of people. Our brains evolved to deal with 60 people and under. That was the population of a typical tribe tens of thousands of years ago. Living in such a small population, we can easily remember everyone, their names, their personalities, our history with them, etc. So we can easily share our fortune and misfortune with them. If someone hands down a wild boar, the meat will be shared with everyone in the tribe. If someone is sick, others will take care of him or her. In the end, everyone would have a better chance to survive. When the population increased, you might think that our social circle would increase as well. We are going to share with more people. But that's not what happened. Our brains couldn't handle millions of people, or even hundreds of people. As a result, our social circles shrank pretty badly. Now we only share our fortune and misfortune with our family members, and occasionally with our closest friends and no one else. So rich people keep their fortune inside their families, and the poor people have to suffer their poverty alone. This is a source of a social-economic inequality for the recent thousands of years ever since the agricultural revolution. Many people believe that rich people are evil. They're not. They still share their fortune inside their families. They still give their money to their children. That's not evil behavior. What's happened is that the ocean effect works on our psychology. Then our million years old sharing system is destroyed. China, as a giant country, has been suffering from the ocean effect longer and more severe than any other country. China is always a huge country ever since the Qing dynasty was established 2,200 years ago. Most time in China's history, China is highly unified, and because the land is rich, it can support a huge population. So a large part of human beings were always living in China. The huge size of this nation, on one hand, secures China. Usually, no one would dare mess with China. But on the other hand, it makes China very unstable internally. And whenever something triggers a civil war inside China, the death toll will always on the world level. Civil wars in China were always like world wars. This is unfortunately China's reality. The worst civil war happened in the Tang Dynasty. Just before this civil war, the Tang Dynasty reached one of the golden ages in China. The happiness didn't last very long. An Lushan rebellion crushed the Tang Empire. The civil war lasted for 7 years. This is arguably the worst war that ever happened in entire human history. Some historians estimated that half of the population in China perished. If 1/3 of humans lived in the Tang Empire back then 1/6 of the total population on Earth perished in this civil war. Of course, it happened about 1,300 years ago. All the numbers are highly questionable, but the point remains because of the huge population and the territory. Internal disasters became a serious part of China. and that makes everything in China very complicated. Running this country is always very challenging. I know there are so many China experts out there thinking they know how to run this country better. You know what? Here's a chance to prove yourself. Let me give you 2 problems. Let's see your skills. Problem 1. The spring transportation. It happens around the Chinese New Year, lasts about 30 to 40 days. The entire transportation system has to transport a huge amount of people. The cause of this unique phenomenon is that family reunion is a strong tradition during the Chinese New Year. No matter where you are, you have to go back to your parents and celebrate the Chinese New Year with them, and then you have to go back to where you work afterward. This is how many people moved during the spring transportation in recent few years. I know, you probably refuse to believe these numbers. These numbers seems unreal, especially 2024. The number is bigger than the total population on Earth. How is that even possible? Well, that's because lots of Chinese move multiple times during the New Year. So stop questioning the numbers. The numbers are good. And don't see anything useless like, oh, why do you guys have to move? Can you guys just stay at home? Talking won't solve the problem. You must do something. Now solve the problem. Problem 2. One-child policy. You see, for decades, one-child policy is heavily condemned by the Western world. Indeed, it caused lots of problems in China. The repercussion continues today. Probably will last for a few more decades into the future. Now it's your time to make a better policy. But before you make a decision, here's the background that you need to know. The year is 1980, and you are a high-ranked Chinese government official. You are a 40-year-old man. You have the power to make decisions for this giant country. Since you are 40, that means you are 20 in 1960, when the Great Famine happened. Millions of people died. It left an indelible impression in your mind. Right after that, you went through the Great Cultural Revolution, another internal disaster. The whole country was in chaos. Again, lots of people died. Finally, it's 1980. The country is recovering slowly from the disasters. One day, you walk into an office. Your secretary follows you in and gives you an envelope. She says it's urgent. You open the envelope. It's the new demographic report. And you are stunned by the report. Why? Well, the population in China reached 1 billion. For the first time in the entire human history, a single country's population reached 1 billion. That's a huge number in any language. You keep reading the report, and your hands begin to tremble because you read something even worse. The total population in 1966, when the Great Cultural Revolution just began, was 800 million. It means the total population in China increased 25% in just 14 years. And the population is not the only problem. In 1980, food in China is still rationed because this country is not confident enough to feed the population. You think that's bad? Let me tell you something else. I went to Beijing in 1992 for my college education. The first year in the school, food was still rationed. When I bought lunch or dinner in the cafeteria, I had to pay money and food stamps. That was 1992, 12 years after 1980. So think about how bad the situation was back in 1980. Alright, this is the background you need to know. Now, make a decision. Look, I'm not trying to convince you that one-child policy was a good idea. That's not my point. My point is that running this country is always very challenging. Even though we can't blame the size of China for everything, it's a factor that is overlooked by most people. We always forget that countries have different sizes. Some big, some tiny. Nepal is also a country, but do you think Nepal has to deal with the same problems Chinese have to deal with? Like the spring transportation of feeding 1.4 billion people? When the territory is such huge, even delivering messages inside the country could be a big problem, which is something small countries don't have to worry about. To rule this giant empire, the government needs messages from every corner of the country. For thousands of years, Chinese have to deliver all the messages by horsemen. In the Tang Dynasty, when An Lushan Rebellion broke out, it took 8 days before the message was delivered to the capital city. Imagine how long it would take to deliver the messages from the further east regions in China. Yet against all the odds, Chinese successfully ran this giant country for thousands of years without any modern technologies. Not just that, China was always a superpower in the world. And most of the time, no one dared to mess around with China. The country is quite safe. So the size is a curse, also a bless. It's situational. You might ask why China has to be huge in the first place. Well, that will be the topic for the next chapter.